Hi, do you know what's the meaning of mindfulness? What mindfulness is not from the Buddhist perspective. Have you asked about what's the origin of mindfulness? Is mindfulness the same as meditation? Why all this business of mindfulness are so successful? In this video, we're going to talk about what mindfulness is, but from the Buddhist perspective. Because in some way, mindfulness was born in the Buddhist tradition. Thank you, Anila, for being here in this channel. Just to people that is the first time you're watching this channel, Anila is the resident nun. Venerable JangChub Lhamo is the resident nun of this center. It's Nyima Tashi Buddhist Center located in Mount Albert, who is the center of Tashi Rinpoche. And thanks Rinpoche for being in this center first, and thank you, Anila, for having space in your agenda for this talk. And well, the thing I would like to start with is with mindfulness. And in the West, and where I used to live in South America, there are many things about mindfulness: courses, workshops, training, and you became a certificated mindfulness teacher. So I'm interested in mindfulness from the Buddhist perspective because I understand it has another approach, and also that within the Buddhist tradition there is mindfulness. So just I would like you to introduce what is mindfulness, what is the meaning of being mindful.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. So I'm very happy to be here with you today to share not just the Buddhist perspective, but as you may be aware, His Eminence, the 9th Trale Rinpoche, was an exceptional master, and with that particular knowledge and background, in 2009 he introduced a series of 21 talks that embodied the concept of mindfulness from the Buddhist perspective, and also related it to what is presently under the umbrella of cognitive therapy. So although I am not Trale Rinpoche, I am hoping that I can recall some of the descriptions that Rinpoche gave when he introduced mindfulness in 2009. I think the thing that I remember is that in the beginning, when Rinpoche introduced the subject matter, he said that we should start to actually look at the Buddhist practice of meditation and the Buddhist practice of mindful meditation, because in reality they are not the same. So as Rinpoche pointed out, in the Buddhist tradition, we are actually trying to attain a state of samadhi, or meditative concentration. And in order to attain this level, we employ the aspects of being mindful. So even though we may be practicing mindfulness practices, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are in a genuine meditative state. But when you look at mindfulness practice, it seems to relate to the thought processes. The word mindfulness, when you translate it, irrespective if it's from the Pali or the Sanskrit or the Tibetan, they all translate as meaning the same, which is recollection and remembrance. And of course there is another component to that. If you are developing focus or meditative concentration, you have to try and stay on the object of meditation, or if you're doing mindfulness practice, to stay on whatever object you are trying to focus on. That means that in order to stay, you have to remember to stay on the breath. By remembering, you're automatically forgetting to wander. So recollection and remembrance is also attached to the theory of forgetting. So I think that that's one aspect of it, and in looking at developing that practice, you have to also, I think, have a wider understanding of the different aspects of mindfulness. As you may know, Buddhism looks at three aspects of mindfulness. You have positive mindfulness, you have negative mindfulness, and then you have neutral forms of mindfulness. And naturally what we're trying to cultivate as Buddhist practitioners is positive forms of mindfulness. But generally, most of us tend to abide in the neutral forms of mindfulness. And all that simply means is that if you are, say, playing tennis, and you are very focused and you are very mindful and you are staying on the ball, as you begin to play the game, there can be a sense of frustration if things aren't going well. There can be a sense of impatience and anger. So what you've done is what began with neutral mindfulness has now developed into negative mindfulness. And so understanding that sort of gives us a sense of balance as to where we're going and how we're handling things. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very basic introduction to mindfulness. I understand that we will have a series of talks, and with each series of talks we'll elaborate and we will carry on from that. But basically, as Rinpoche said, we are always mindful. We have never ever not been mindful. We are simply mindful of the wrong thing. And that comes because of recollection, remembrance, or forgetfulness. We are constantly forgetting to come back to the object of our focus. But it's not that you have to train people in being mindful. We are always mindful. We're just simply mindful of the wrong thing. So I think that would be the introduction to mindfulness from the Buddhist perspective. And then because mindfulness is quite elaborate, I think at times, perhaps with cognitive therapy, the weight of its realization is really quite brief. And I can understand that from some point of view. I think that people quite often presume that Buddhism is either a philosophical approach, or quite often it's simply a meditative approach. But under the umbrella heading of Buddhism means that many tendrils or many interdependent aspects must come together in order to practice. So as you know, Buddhist psychology then comes into it. After that you have Buddhist philosophy. You then have to look at abstract aspects or metaphysics. You then look at natural sciences. So you see, Buddhism brings together many different factors, and of course contained within Buddhism is a religion. But religion, just like the philosophical aspects, just like psychology, just like metaphysics, just like epistemology, they are all one aspect of it. So as Tralik Rinpoche would say, Buddhism is really about integral Buddhism. It is about developing all aspect of one's being. So when you are in perhaps mindfulness meditation in relationship to perhaps cognitive therapy, there seems to be a separation. So you are developing a subject that is focused on an object. So if there is a separation, there is a sense of tension. So what Buddhist practice looks at in relationship to mindfulness practice is more of a unified aspect of training the mind. So if there is no separation, then there is no tension, and then one can abide in experiences as opposed to looking at things and objectifying things and staying on things. Because whereas mindfulness practice is extremely helpful, especially if you're suffering from chronic pain or you have a very busy mind, but within that system there seems to be a general lacking of insight. And so I think that in these series of talks that we're opening up, these conversations that Rinpoche gave in 2009, I really hope that as I benefited tremendously from Rinpoche's talks, that this wider scope of mindfulness can actually help to promote a different form of growth in people that may suffer. So thank you for inviting me, and I hope that we can expand on these 21 talks that Rinpoche gave on mindfulness, cognition and well-being.
Thank you, Anila.
Oh, thank you, Tashi.